decided to take a crap. So back to what I was saying here. I'm going to tape these good joints up real quick with my good duct tape, my Gorilla tape, and then we'll use crappy cheap duct tape to fix all the loose fittings, and then we'll test this bad mamma jammer out. So I like the way that fits. We got one last fitting here to do. And we'll leave the bottom one loose so I can get the lid off. And then what I'm going to do now is it's loose on the actual dust collector, so I'm going to pull this off real quick and make that a tighter fit. And I'm trying to wind slightly down this thing so I don't end up with all my tape in one spot. I think that might be it. Yeah. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we are going to test this bad boy. And I still have these joints to tape, but for right now it'll be just fine the way it is just to test it. So I got to get something to block this off. Throw a little tape on there for right now. Alright, we'll be back in just a sec. Alright, so we ran out of light last night and had to continue this morning. And what the camera's pointed at is some cheesy floor registers I made. I took some hinges, some cabinet hinges that are spring loaded, and I bent them and then just made these flaps, these floor registers that I can open with my feet. And I sweep a lot of stuff besides dust into the registers, into the dust collector, and large pieces will end up hitting the impeller. And so part of the reason for this dust collector, or this dust separator, is so big pieces of wood and metal and crap that I sweep up off the floor doesn't actually go into the impeller. So we're going to go ahead and turn on the impeller and test this thing, so it's going to get really loud. But the pile of dust that I've got here, it would have sucked it up okay before. I'm hoping that there's a fair amount of difference. I did wash my my bags, so they're more porous and they're clean and all that stuff, and I'll be able to test how much dust is making it past the separator and into the bag. So we'll look at the separator in the bag in a second here, but I'm going to go ahead and turn the dust collector on and sweep this stuff in. So if you'll turn the dust collector on. so I'll talk here in a second as soon as the dust collector quits running. You can hear that it's bent. The impeller's bent. It hits on something. You know, it's a garage sale item, and it works in a pinch, but it's really not what I'm wanting or looking for. But you can see that it did suck it up. It sucked all the big pieces up, which I'm just shocked. It left some stuff in the corner there. Some of this is wiring, which I would imagine is hard to pick up, and then I think some of it just didn't. It's wet. So that's part of why it didn't get sucked up, was because I have a leak in my roof and it got wet down here in the corner. But I'm going to suck the rest of this up off camera, and then we'll get turned around and we'll look at what made it into the separator and what actually made it into the impeller itself. Alright, so I haven't done this before. I'm going to take the hose off and get to, actually, do we need to take that side off? Maybe not. I'm just going to take this side off and see what made it into the can versus what made it into the dust separator. I'm not a big fan of soft hoses. I'd use them, but I think the corrugation affects the ability to suck stuff up. So I would say that the discouraging thing is there's dust on both sides of the baffle, so that's a little discouraging. Let's see, which side was the suction side? Yeah, I think that was right. Look at how much more dust and stuff's over there.
I don't think so. But...
yeah. Like this.
Anyways.
So that's discouraging. I don't know if maybe the baffle's not tall enough or if it's just a wrong design. I know obviously the Thien works. So I guess what we'll do is we'll get into this. Can you bring the camera up? So this is the side that I think all the material went into, and then you can see right here there's dust that's collected on these edges, so that's a little discouraging. I don't know, my baffle's only 10 inches deep. It may need to be deeper. So this is, kind of an experiment on my part. So now we'll check the bag. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and check what's in the bag and see how much actually made it into there. It actually looks like most of it made it in there. So let me see if I can show it to the camera. Can you see in there? A good chunk of the dust made it in there. So we'll call that for right now a failure. And what we're going to do is try to improve on this design, see if I can, I know it's a pressure thing. I was hoping that the pressure would be low enough that hardly any would make it into the bag. Obviously a lot more made it into the bag than I wanted. So we're gonna do this puppy again until we get it right. So see you guys in a little bit. Alright, I installed 90-degree elbows on the register, or on the dust collector. What was happening was with just the straight connectors, the dust was so powerful from the incoming suction side, or it'd be the blower side, but from the incoming dust side, it was blowing dust off the bottom of the can and then blowing it up into the suction for the actual dust collector itself. So we'll try this again with 90-degree elbows. I'm gonna go ahead and turn the dust collector on. It's gonna get noisy, and we'll see if it'll still pick all this stuff up, and we'll see if anything's changed as far as how much ends up in the bag. So one of the things I noticed already is the suction's down just a little bit. And what you can see left, well, you probably can't see it from the screen, but it left. This is a nail, some copper wiring, and a knockout plug. So it won't pull the metal, or at least the smaller pieces of metal that it isn't able to act on. And that register, I have another register across the way that's lower to the ground. I should have made this register closer to the ground so that it was that the suction was able to act closer to the floor. So if you build one of these registers, I think that I threw something together, just a couple boards, and caulked them to the floor, and they're like, I want to say that one's 2.5 inches up. I would build them 2 inches or less, and maybe a little wider. And I would put the hose. I couldn't put the hose in the middle on this one because the door's right there, but I could have moved the tube over. So I would put it in the middle, and we'll check and see how the separator worked with the 90-degree elbows. All right, my helper isn't with me this morning because he's still sleeping. So we'll do this with just me. So the way this is orientated, there was these grooves down the garbage can to help facilitate getting garbage bags out, and that's where my baffle is, lined up with this one, and then same on the other corresponding side. What it did though is you can see how my 90s are positioned. So they're like this with the baffle in the middle. This is kind of experimentation on my part to see how quick and easy I could put one of these together. So there's a fair amount of dust or garbage in the bag, and it didn't seem to be blown out as bad this time. Hopefully you guys can see that on the video. So we'll go ahead and check the bag. And we'll see how the bag did this time, because the bag had a lot of dust in it last time. Way more than it should have had if the separator's working. So there's a lot less in there this time. I'll dump it out on the ground. Last time there was probably half of what I actually collected was in there. This time, you can't see it, hold on. So that's a pretty fine powder, like a talcum type powder. This is probably what I've got from sweeping all the fine dust off the floor. There's not too many heavy shavings in there. Here's one thing that did make it through. So not sure how that made it through, but if I go through this dust, almost none of this dust is actual curled cut chips from like a saw blade. It's all real fine. I would call it sanding dust. I cut some of this plastic for this project, so there's some plastic dust in there. But I would like it to work a little better than this even. I think we'll call this a success for now, and then down the road I might add some more baffling on the intake side. But as far as not having to build a circular Thien baffle or Thien, or however you pronounce them, as far as not having to build a circular baffle and go to all the trouble to form stuff, and I also know there's garbage can Thien baffles you can put in. I've seen those on YouTube as well. But I just wanted to slam something together and see if I could make a reasonably decent dust separator that will protect the impeller on this jet dust collector, and then eventually when I move over to the wooden impeller, it will be very fragile, and I definitely don't want particles going through. So I'll probably I'll bring you guys back over to the garbage can. What I'll probably do is on the side, sorry about the shadowing, on the side that goes to the dust collector itself, what I'll probably do down here is put in a screen. So I'll just make a ledger down here and attach a screen from the bottom. And I think that'll keep any large particles from ever being able to go into the impeller. And, you know, maybe it'll also keep some of the, if there are any coarser particles. But I did notice that there's some Top Choice lumber stickers from big box store, you know, off of the end, there you can see them now, off of the end of the boards, and those stayed in here, and they're paper, receipt, or, you know, pieces of paper. So I would call it a success. So all this consists of is just a cross piece here, 10 inches down. I might have made it a little tiny bit deeper given how deep the 90s are. I'll back the camera up and let you guys see the lid as well. So let me grab the lid real quick. The lid just consists of some street 90s. So when you go to your local plumbing store or whatever, these street 90s, let me make sure they're in the picture. A little taller. How about now? Yep. All right. These street 90s just push into these fittings. They're tight. I'm not going to tape them or glue them in case I want to change the angle of them. You know, I can do that. And you'll see earlier in the video where I compressed these two fittings and glued them together, and they're so tight that they won't even turn. They won't actually turn in the lid. They're permanent to the lid. So, and then I just used, to recap, some foam, some like weather stripping with hot glue gun glue. I'm not real keen on the hot glue gun glue, and yet the sticky side of this foam isn't real wonderful either. So I'm not sure if I would tape this off and use a contact adhesive and try it that way, you know, like a 3M contact adhesive sprayable, or what I would do. But I certainly don't, this hot glue gun glue, I had to reheat with my heat gun to get it to actually bond. And I ended up melting a spot on the garbage can, which is fine. It just melted right here a little bit. But yeah, that part was kind of a pain in the ass. So that would probably was the part that took the longest. But I would consider this a success, and I'm pretty happy with it. So we'll continue on with the new impeller here in a little while, and I'm going to try to improve on impeller that worked really well for a guy on YouTube, and just make it a little bigger. I've got a 1-horse motor here, and so I'm going to see how big I can make the impeller without overloading the motor. So stay tuned. Thanks.